Well, welcome to the Sales Scholars, where we talk to academic experts about sales and sales-related topics. Well, our first guest today is Amy Vandaveer Novak. Now, Amy is a colleague at the University of Houston, but she's also an award-winning professor who teaches at the Bauer College of Business. Now, Amy specializes in personal branding and communications, and she does a fantastic job of preparing both our students for the future in developing their own brands, but then also working with organizations outside of the University of Houston to help them understand this complex thing about branding. Amy, welcome to the first episode of Sales Scholar. So it's great to have you here.
Excited to be here, Craig. Thanks for asking me.
Oh my gosh, no, this is great. And I think right now, this topic that we're going to talk about today is really, really important. You know, lots of conversation always about building your brand, but the idea of how to build a digital brand seems more relevant today than ever. So what do you think makes it such an important topic right now?
I think what's really important about a digital brand is because in today's world, especially since what has happened with COVID-19, making everything virtual, we have to be really clear on how we're communicating. And that is what the benefit of a personal brand does. A personal brand basically is a promise of value, like any brand is. You know, it could be Hermes, it could be Louis Vuitton, it could be Nike, but they really, all those brands create something in your head that think, all right, what do I expect when I say that? It's the same thing for a personal brand. Like, what is your reputation? What is it that you bring? And in today's world where we have to distance, where in the way in which I connect with my customers or my colleagues or my boss is through a screen, I have to be really clear on what I want to be able to offer them. And so that's why a digital brand is more essential today than historically before, because we work in a two-dimensional world as of right now. And I think it's going to continue that way.
Yeah, it's kind of like us as we interact through the screen. This is like the common thing that I think people are faced with today.
Right. And, as you know, I pride myself on in the classroom being able to say to unplug and engage, right? Like, come in, put away your technology, look people in the eye, and let's have a conversation. Let's really be in touch. And I had to 100% change the way in which I communicated. And I had to say, actually plug in and engage. Because that's the only way in which we're going to be able to communicate. And it was a real shift for me after 20 years of being able to walk into the classroom to mid-semester, have to change. No, actually, let's use technology as a way to provide value. And so it's not just, academics that are facing this and how they're going to reach their students and provide value to the students that they paid for. It's the same thing with sales and companies and that to their customers. What are you going to do and how are you going to be able to connect in a world that shifted overnight?
Yeah, that's funny you talk about you're kind of known for that unplug and engage. Did it take you a little bit to get used to that? No, we got to plug in and engage.
Yes, actually it was really uncomfortable. And because I like people, I like interacting. And the next thing you know, I had to smile at my green light on my computer. And how am I going to connect with the information? And technology a lot of times can be intimidating for me. I mean, I'm the first person to do that. So even as we talk about digital personal branding, I had to figure out, what am I doing? And really, that's what I want people to understand about a digital personal brand. The promise of value is the same. I was still the expert. I still understood what I was bringing to the table. Was really clear on why I was passionate about the subject matter of sales and branding and communication. And I had all that. I just had to change and adapt for the format in which I delivered it. And it changed really drastically. It's been evolving. You've seen a lot. We talk about that in our class around the digital economy and how companies had to do that. But it was like overnight, a real quick, fast light switch that happened. And I always say this, it comes around communication and businesses, is that it's about the adaptability. And Darwin has a quote that says, it's not the strongest of the species that survive. It's not the most intelligent that survives. It's the one that's most adaptable. So in order for me to be significant and relevant overnight in a week's time. I had to adapt. And that's the very same thing businesses are learning to do and salespeople are learning to do. So my biggest thing that I want to tell people is your value, your core competencies, what your expertise is, doesn't change in a digital environment.
Yeah.
How you deliver it is the big thing.
Yeah, that's a great, I love the comparison there. Nothing changes about your brand. Just now you have to deliver it in electronic form through a screen or through the platforms that people are engaged in. So, one of the things I'm curious about, because, when people talk about the digital brand, it's like this, okay, yeah, but people may not always understand exactly what that means. What do you see as some of the key components to establishing your digital brand in kind of this new world?
Right. So first, what I want people to be really clear on is how do you establish your brand before, because you can't until you know what you offer. It doesn't matter what you do digitally. Does that make sense? So you have to be really clear on, to me, a couple key things. Number one, your core values. What do you stand for? What is it that you believe in? What is it that you stand by? That fundamentally, your core value of this is what I believe in, this is what's important to me, this is what my company does, what we stand for, has to be the promise of value. The second is, what are you going to deliver better than anybody else, your core competency? And if you don't know that, you have to define that, because otherwise, it becomes noise and it becomes a lot of tactics. I'll do this, I'll post this, I'll do this. But when someone goes in, they don't necessarily know what you're offering. So first and foremost, if you're thinking about a digital brand, be really clear on what you offer as your own personal brand, right? And I always tell people, go and have a cup of coffee with yourself. Go figure that out. And what is it that you really offer better than anyone else, and how can I then deliver upon that even in a digital world? How I can exemplify that in the digital space is basically what I'm really good and passionate about, I share, like I would if I was having a conversation with you in person across from your desk. It's now in a different world, right? And the benefit of a digital brand is I don't have to necessarily be across the table from you to give you value. And it don't have to be at just one-to-one. I can provide information to where it goes from, look at this great article, look at what I've been able to do, look at the research that comes out of this, look at what we were able to accomplish in the classroom. And I send it out and I can then disseminate that to my entire network instantaneously. That's really where the power of a digital brand comes in. So you want to think about the different ways in which you can incorporate that. First is, what is your social media presence, right? Do you have a Twitter account? Do you have a Facebook? Do you have an Instagram? Do you have a LinkedIn? And how do you authentically and transparently provide the value that if I met you in person, I would be able to communicate that?
And we talk a lot about the digital, or really the social platforms, the ones that you mentioned. There seems to be like a lot of different ways you can go about establishing your digital brand potentially. Like, are there some resources or any recommendations of things that people could go to kind of help them formulate specifically what establishing their digital brand could look like?
You want to be really clear on your value proposition, right? And I think that's really explicit. So do you want to be known as the communicator? Do you want to be known as a relator, a networker, a connector, a product expert? What do you want to be known for? And how can you then disseminate information based on what you're interested in to people that it's going to be of value to? And again, it goes back to the adaptability of how I'm going to connect that to the marketplace. So Forbes top 100 most equitable brands of 2019, 20 out of those 100 have been in existence since before 1900. Think about that.
Wow.
One of my favorites is Nivea hand cream. Hey, Nivea. Or Budweiser, right? General Electric.
Okay, now when you say Budweiser, I get that better than I get Nivea cream, but.
Right, but I think about, hand cream is still relevant in today's world, especially in COVID-19 world, right? Yeah. Where your hands are like deserts from all of the sanitizing and the disinfecting and the hand washing. but it's the relevance of how they still are able to position themselves of value in the marketplace. And when you're looking at how to create that, get really clear on what you like. Because when you like something, you're going to spend time researching it, reading it, and you want to share about it. Think about it. Netflix. Oh, people get so excited about the Crazy Tiger King, which I did not necessarily understand the relevance around that, because I did watch it and I was like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
But people were so excited and they shared it. Think about what that did. It's the same thing when you're excited and you want to do research on it and you want to share it. That's where the authenticity and value proposition comes in. And so the way in which you can do that is by then sharing to where it's a value to other people. It's not just about you promoting you. I think that's where people have a real issue around personal branding. They think it's about, oh, look at me, look at this selfie, look at this. That's not what it is. It's a promise of value. So that if I shared an article with you, right? Or if I posted something of relevance to me, it's a promise of what you're going to get when you meet me in person.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I do say, yeah, I think people get jammed up on it about promoting it versus exactly what we're talking about is this kind of just establishing it.
Right.
Who do you stand for? What have you seen any common mistakes that people make when trying to establish their brand?
Yes, I think some people actually, they want to be the known, and this is true for a lot of times younger sales people or younger professionals. They want to be the expert when there's no way they can be. Does that make sense? They just haven't had enough tenure in order to establish themselves as knowledgeable. And so how do you do that, right? I think about our students. The easiest way to do that is to just get really curious and ask people, right? I read this really great article. What are your thoughts on this? What does this mean to you? I'm going into this. Who are the people that I can do this? So basically, you're acknowledging, I'm still a bit of a novice here, but I really want to get better. So I'm going to ask people what they think, or I'm going to reference, I learned this from X person.
Yeah.
I was able to use it in this entity. Maybe it can help your business or your product or your customer or whatever it is. And that way you give credit where credit is due. The one thing I think that is really important is that as you build your brand, you acknowledge those who have made you kind of the expert. Where are your sources? Who are the experts that you've learned from? Because then that is where the authenticity, the give to give comes across, and you earn trust and you earn credibility faster.
Yeah, I love those two. The trust and credibility part in particular, like to me, that's always a bit of what a brand says, whether it says it directly or not. Like, should you trust me? And am I credible?
Right.
And I like what you pointed out about the students. Now, assume for just a second, though, that I am an expert in something. I have a number of years in it. What recommendations can you make for establishing my digital brand to kind of highlight my expertise?
Right. And this goes back to what I was kind of talking about, is a lot of times if you are an expert, you know it, and you don't really feel that it's relevant to spend time doing it. Look, my customers know what I bring to the table. I'm already done this, blah, blah, blah. I don't really want to go out and start, highlighting myself in a way that, oh, look, Amy's the expert.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
You said, yeah, you said that's kind of one of those mistakes that people make.
Yeah.
They have to highlight it.
Well, and I think with a way in which it's a shift of perspective. So think about it. If you are the expert, you're kind of, king in your domain. How many people can learn from you if you're willing to share? Yeah. And that is a different way where you flip the perspective of, I have this that I can share with other people that really is going to be of value to my customers, to their business, to the marketplace, to my network, to my coworkers, to where you provide value to them. And it's not, hey, look at me, I'm Mr. Know-it-all.
Yeah. I want to, the expertise I've said to a lot of people, I feel like you can establish yourself as an expert more so today
Mhm.
than ever before in the history of the world because of what social platforms can do for you and how they can build your network. So I want to get just a little bit tactical and specific on social platforms.
Mhm.
What are ways that an expert can address their social platforms so that their expertise is communicated?
Right. So I think when you look at the different platforms, right, you have your digital presence, right, which could be, if you have a website, if you've got a bio, what does it look like? What does your signature look like? What do your emails look like when they go in? So that's kind of your kind of marketing collateral. And what you want to do is there's 3 C's of branding, right? There's clarity, there's consistency, and there's constancy. And then I always add in the 4th C, which is my own, and that's communication. So I think what you want is you want to make sure that you're clear, consistent, constant in how you're communicating out. So looking at what does it look like, right? What are your messaging when I send out, just even doing business, and how am I going to communicate? What does it look like? And then looking at the different ways in which you can connect. So I think if LinkedIn is really, really impactful. If you don't have it, I think you're a little bit behind the curve today. And it's important. It's a way to, are you there? Are you vetted? Who can you connect with? And so if you had one, I for sure would do that. And then you want to look at the other realm. And when you're looking at your LinkedIn, right, does it have your photo, right? Does your photo kind of represent, if you were going to walk into a customer's office or place of business, does it look like you? Or does it look like you on Saturday at 5?
So you're saying the picture of me with my fishing rod and the big fish holding up on my LinkedIn, probably not good for the brand.
Not unless it's something that is relevant in the industry that I'm working in. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah.
And how I can connect. Yeah, so it's a professional realm. Now, what you can do, and a lot of people will do this, is in order to give transparency and authenticity, they will then incorporate opportunities to link in on other social platforms that do give me insight into my Instagram, which, hey, I like to fish or I like to garden. See me here in this realm that gives you a little bit more insight into me as a personal person rather than my professional person, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing under Twitter. Twitter is really a way to engage and then also create a hub of information and resources, because Twitter is where we get our news today. And a lot of things pop in on Twitter, and it's immediate, and it's where customer service is done. So you can hone in the different areas that show kind of a 3-dimensional view of you in a digital world that then provide transparency and authenticity.
Yeah. It seems like you come back to those words quite a bit: transparency and authenticity,
Yeah.
which sound like they're relevant whether you're digital brand or two-dimensional brand or whatever dimension you are. Those are the important parts of the brand.
Right. And so when you think, is a brand experience is the sum of all points of contact, right? The sum of all, every time that you engage with me, I have created in your mind an expectation of, when you see Amy, what are you going to get? Right. And that is what, it's basically a reputation, right? That's all a brand, a personal brand experience is, a reputation. So we create that every time we engage, right? And the responsiveness, and how what I do, what I put out there, and then when you meet with me, right? What you've seen online should be, creates an expectation, and it should be met or exceeded in person.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. Well, I know you've had a chance to kind of work with different companies, work with different people. I'm curious as to what have been some of like the best practices that you've encountered, whether it is with a specific organization or a person related to this whole digital branding thing.
Right. Well, the benefit, I let us study abroad to Paris for a long time and taught international marketing in conjunction with one of my colleagues, Dr. Vanessa Patrick Rahan. And she focused in a lot of luxury branding. And what I think is really interesting in this, and I know this is the same thing, but it's so important, really amazing brands always go back to what they value and what they're really good at. So, we had the opportunity to go to Krug Champagne. And if you know anything about it, it is the kind of the elite of the elite. It's really a very high end champagne. And they had we had the opportunity to hear from the president and CEO, which was the only female CEO in the entire champagne industry. And she came from consumer goods in beverages in Latin America, and then had to come in and rebuild this brand. And they were all over the place. And what they found was they found the journal of the original founder and why he started the champagne winery in the first place. And that gave them the kind of compass of how to move forward, because it was rooted in truth and it was rooted in purpose. So they used that to basically help tell the story. And I think that that's what's really important. I think a lot of people think I'll do a whole lot. I'll post a lot. I'll share a lot. I'll do all of that. It just becomes noise. So when you're really clear on what you want to be known for, then what you put out there is bits of gold. So that, again, it's the experience is, I'm really interested in this. This is what it is. This is what my promise of value is going to be. And I think people spend way too much time on tactics and they don't spend a lot of time on the why.
So Amy, I know you get a chance to work with not only the students, but you get to work with companies and different brands, and knowing that you're an expert in it, you're always paying attention to what others are doing. So I'm curious as to who are some of the brands you've seen that like do this stuff really well?
That's funny. There's two that come to mind, particularly during this digital realm where we're all social distancing. And one is HEB, which is a Texas based grocer, and anybody that's in Texas knows HEB is king here. And in fact, their tagline is all about my HEB. There's so much, kind of ownership about how we have that relationship with grocers. The second one is Starbucks. Because I got my Starbucks. I like my, Earl Grey London Fog Latte. And when you can't go in every day and get your Starbucks at your local, there's a way that we can't connect. And so what I find really fascinating about both of those brands is, number one, their employees are all called partners. And it's part of the ownership with them. And on HEB, they always, on their Instagram, right? Because I follow them. They always kind of have the Texas sign, and then you can scroll through, and they always pay homage to somebody. Last week it was teachers, because it was Teacher Appreciation Week. Then it was, nurses was the week before. And then a couple of days ago, they paid, really acknowledging the suppliers, local Texas suppliers that provide, tomatoes or lettuce into the grocery stores. And really, it was not about, this is the special on sale. It's about the community and really the my HEB, owning it with the customer. Same thing with Starbucks. They honored, because it's graduation season. They did this beautiful little video of recognizing 700 of their employees who received their college education through 100% supported by the Starbucks college.
Oh, that's cool.
And, and it's like, I finally opened up the Starbucks the other day. I finally was able to go in. They opened it up, the one down the street from me. And it is a one where everybody goes to. I mean, there is a retirement group of gentlemen that is their bread and butter every morning. And I walked in, and we do all the social distancing. They have the masks on. But one of the baristas who's been there as long as I have gone there said, "It's so great to see you. How are you? I have missed everyone." And so I think about that, and I think about, it's just a cup of coffee or my tea, but it's not. It's the promise of what you are going to get, and really the care that is given when I walk in to the grocery store or when I walk in to get my tea. It's the promise of what the experience will be. That's really what a really powerful brand is.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and it's just, I mean, it's certainly something that, yeah, that's what now today it is something that people can establish and stand for individually, along with what the companies are doing. So that's those are great examples.
Yeah. And when you think about like a personal brand, all it is a promise of what people are going to expect from you. And, just like companies mess up, people mess up, but it's what is this consistent thing that's being known across the board, that's what you get when you talk to Amy, kind of thing. That's what you really want to hone in on. And when you love what you do and you're passionate about it, the excitement translates. In fact, this morning, they opened up last week. This morning, they can't go into the store, but they're hanging out, leaning on the front of their cars with their coffee. And it's just kind of one of those things. But last week, what they did was, especially in this world of education, they honored and gave this really beautiful little video of 700 of their employees, which they call partners, both HEB and Starbucks call them partners, recognition of congratulations on your graduation. While we can't celebrate with you in person, we are definitely honoring you. And they promoted their employee college fund program, which I think is outstanding. It wasn't about coffee, right? But when I walked in last week to the guy, they got their masks, and you walk in, you've got all your X's where you stand to social distance. The guy said, "Oh, it's so nice to see you. I haven't been in 7 weeks. I've missed everybody." And I really think about that promise of value, that for someone to see you in a person is, wow, look at that. But they did the promise of who they were online when I can't walk into the store.
Yeah, that's a great way to actually wrap up our conversation. That the company did what they promised, it lined up, but they did what they promised online.
Yeah.
The same thing with people. It's like, do what you promise, do what you stand for online. I love how you pointed out this idea of what are the visuals on your digital brand say, and then what are the things you're posting on, commenting on, sharing on? Are they all consistent with your brand? So, Amy, if I was going to go and start establishing my digital brand now, what are some like practical steps I could take?
The first thing would kind of go back to the basics, is what I said. And I think the easiest way to think about that for your brand experience is to answer the question, what 3 words do I want to be used to describe me? And again, like, is it creativity? Then where am I showing creativity in my online profile? And, through all of my digital realms, where is my creativity showing up? Is it excellence? Where am I showing that? What does it look like? And how am I disseminating the information that I'm passionate about around those? So really define those 3 things, because what that does is it gets really clear on what you want to share.
Yeah.
And how you want to do it. The second thing that I would do is I would then go look up someone you admire, that you know in person, that you actually have a relationship with, that is engaged in this realm, and see what they're doing. Kind of in a way, take a look at, what does their LinkedIn profile do? Are they on Instagram? What does it look like? How are they doing it? Or even the brands, like I mentioned, HEB and Starbucks. So go and look at those you admire, and how kind of that way, once I know what I want to be known for, that's really key. That's where the authenticity and transparency comes in, because it's about you. Then go look and figure out, what are other people doing well?
Yeah.
And really that then helps create the golden thread of your brand experience that aligns again with your promise, your value proposition.
Yeah, I love that. That's funny. I've evolved my own LinkedIn profile over the last few months, and oftentimes I will go look at people who have established their brand, who are thought leaders. I don't always know them, but I know of their work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I go study what they're doing, and then I make adjustments to evolve my own brand, but making sure it stays consistent with who I am and what I want to stand for.
Right. That's the biggest, that's why you got to do your own before you start looking at other people.
Yeah.
right? You got to know, what do you want to be known for? Because that's you. There's only one you, and that's your unique value promise. But then how others do it, I mean, that's old school marketing, right? The marketing tactics haven't ever changed. The products, the value proposition is unique to them. So it's easy to learn. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Go look at those that you admire that are doing it well, and then figure out how you can disseminate your own value proposition effectively. Personal branding is not about promoting you. It's on promoting how you can help others. And when you flip that perspective, it becomes fun, and people know it, because you're not people know when people are about themselves, and people know when they're about others. And if you flip that, those who are like, I don't want to do that, or I don't have the time to do it, when you realize you're of value and what you know and your expertise and experience can really help others, then it really gives you the opportunity to share tenfold.
Yeah, man, that's good. That's great. Well, Amy, I appreciate your time. I know the people who are listening to this, who are interested in what the sales scholars have to say, will definitely gain from what you've talked about. So thanks for being on this first episode.
Thank you for having me.